So thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Bruce Douglas. I'm the CEO of the Global Renewables Alliance. We are the industry voice for renewables internationally. In our membership, we represent wind, solar, hydropower, and geothermal on the generation side, but also, importantly, we represent storage, green hydrogen, and flexibility, so grids. I'm talking to you today about two things: the good news and the bad news of the transition. And following on from what was just discussed by REN21, it's important that the private sector step up and deliver alongside financiers, the NGOs, and of course, governments. Now, the good news, if you take your mind back 2 years, or just under 2 years, to COP28 in Dubai, where we managed collectively to achieve the target of doubling energy efficiency, tripling renewable energy, and a call to transition away from fossil fuels. And we dubbed it Double Down and Triple Up. Now, the good news is that that sends a very powerful market signal. It also raises awareness about the importance of renewable energy for the transition. The other good news is that since then, records are being broken. So what's clear is countries are delivering a record pace. Last year, as you see there, $728 billion was invested. It's billion, not million. $1 billion were invested globally in renewable energy. Now, that's about 600, 700 gigawatts. I'll come on to the bad news in a moment. But also, the energy system is electrifying. So, in fact, electrifying 6 times faster than the energy growth. Now, that deployment of renewable energy since 2020 is now delivering benefits. It saved $400 billion globally in energy costs last year alone. Important to note that renewable energy deployment is now the dominant renewable energy installation globally. Over 80% of the installations in the power sector were in renewable energy last year. So do not believe the hype that renewables can't deliver. Not only are we delivering in gigawatts, we're also delivering in terms of generation, so the gigawatt hours, but also in terms of savings. Now to the bad news. It is still not happening fast enough. So although we have that goal of tripling, we are way off track to meeting that. We're also way off track the 1.5 degree pathway and net zero. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is that it's not diversified deployment in terms of geographies. So of the installations I spoke about, the 600-700 gigawatts, the majority is installed in developed markets, so China, the US, and EU. Outside those markets, only about 15 to 20% of the installations are taking place. So where it really is needed and where the benefits can be seen most in those developing countries, renewables are not being deployed. And that's for various reasons, which I'll come on to in a moment. The enablers are the crucial factor here. We in the Global Renewables Alliance focus on 5. So first of all, permitting. So in order to build the renewables, we need permission to do so. And still, it takes longer to permit a wind farm than it does to build one in many jurisdictions. In fact, we're going backwards in that respect. 20 years ago, when I started in renewable energy, it would take some months or a year maybe to permit a wind farm. 10 years ago, it may have taken a few years. Now it can take up to 10 or even 12 years to permit a wind farm. That's ridiculous when we're under a climate crisis, and the opportunities for deploying renewables are so significant. The second enabler that we focus on is flexibility. So it's grids and storage. There are currently 3,000 gigawatts of renewables waiting for connection globally. And we know the solutions. So accelerated timelines, one-stop shops, and also put it as in the interest to permit wind farms faster. Germany employed those rules and immediately had an uptick in wind farm development. Storage, of course, is critical alongside grids for that. Supply chains, so that's supply chains across all renewable but also grid technology, are critical. We need resilient, strong, and diverse supply chains. The fourth is demand. And so this is demand from the typical corporate off-takers, but also from the large energy consumers. We're now starting to see steel and aluminium and others showing huge interest in renewable power. And the last enabler, which is by far the most important, is finance. And in emerging markets, as I said, that's the challenge. So how can we de-risk the investments so that the return for our members is of interest for them to put their money in? So the capital, we have the trillions of dollars to deploy, and we need $11 trillion cumulatively between now and 2030. And how do we mobilize that capital and de-risk it? In summary, the opportunity we face with the tripling, so the 11,000 gigawatts, which is, by the way, 3 gigawatts per day, every day, between now and 2030, built and connected. And if you know what 3 gigawatts looks like, 3,000 megawatts of renewables every day, then you understand the challenge, but also the once-in-a-generation opportunity to deploy the renewables. And then the benefits come. So three words that I've heard during BETD, including by Vice Chancellor Habeck last night, is about abundance, resilience, affordable, independent, and of course, growth. If you go down that route of investing in renewables, then you develop 2.5 times the number of jobs as you would for the same amount of money invested in fossil fuels. You also bring down the cost of electricity significantly. So affordability and competitiveness are accrued as benefits. And the final one I'll focus on is security. Truly secure energy comes from renewable and electrified power systems, energy systems, not from fossil fuel and conventional power. I'll stop there, but I ask you as an audience to join the movement, join GRA, and double down and triple up. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask you. So sure. You talked, I think you said the figure was 80% of what was installed last year was renewables. When I look at prices, whether it's here in Europe or from the United States where I'm from, I see that renewables are in the mix, and they're actually really great. And now we have to pay more money for solar and wind just because of how pricing works. Yesterday, Annalena Baerbock also talked about that the transition is already happening. She used an example in Texas, for example. So even in places where politically it seems like maybe it's a little bit contradictory. So why do we still need to pitch renewable energy?
Great question. And so there's two questions there. First of all, on the pricing, I do not want to explain the details of market design or the merit order effect and marginal pricing, but it is absolutely clear that it's fossil gas in Europe that is driving the price of electricity up and not renewable energy.
Yeah.
Now, that's a confusion that takes some digging into and explaining, but the price of gas, so the high price of gas, prices all electricity, including renewables. So even my mum says, well, you asked me to take 100% renewable tariff, and my electricity bill has gone up. But it's not the 100% electricity bill, the renewables, that has driven a power price up. It's definitely the fossil gas on the system.
Yeah.
And your second question about politics and the pitch is politics always or quite often gets in the way of policies. So we as an industry, as I said, need strong, stable, long-term enabling frameworks. We need investor confidence to put our money into those projects. So we need politics also, some stability. What you see is even in the US, 22 states are still in on renewables. They see the benefits, the investments are clear, and the jobs and manufacturing results from that. So the pitch is required, not just to keep those actors who are already investing in it, but the new actors, the huge potential and opportunity in those other markets around the world. So we travel around the world meeting governments, and the question is not if they should do it, it's how. So the pitch is changing from why they should do it to how they can do it, and explaining the technologies, the policies, and the finance mechanisms that can enable that, using case studies.
Thank you so much. I want to ask you a little bit about how do we do something. So you mentioned 5 different enablers, and the 5th one, the one that you said was most important, is finance. We heard yesterday in yesterday's closing panel discussion, the money's there. It's there. We just need to find a way, we need to mobilize it. So I'm going to ask you, how do we do that? How do we mobilize that money?
Well, there's two quick ways. One is to level the playing field. I mean, we're operating on an unfair playing field, mainly due to fossil fuel subsidies. The result of that, partially because of that, is that the return on investment for renewable energy projects is single digit in many markets, so 7, 8, 9%, whereas for fossil fuel projects, it tends to be 20 to 40%. And the capital will follow those signals. And so you need to, first of all, level the playing field, adjust the subsidies. Yeah? On electrification, the taxes and tariffs on electricity are still 2 times they are on gas. So again, if you remove those, reduce those tariffs and taxes, immediately you incentivize electrification. And the final thing is about risk. Now, risk is an interesting topic. There's multiple risks: currency risk, country risk, project risk, technology risk, off-taker risk. When you add them all up, it adds to quite a stack of risk, which then prices the capital. And we have a high cost of capital, upfront cost for renewables, and then almost zero cost, zero fuel cost at least. So the reduction in that risk, so the perceived risk is often higher than the real risk. So what is the real risk? Yeah, and there's many different ways. I won't go into details now, but there's many different ways of addressing that through financing. Public financing is required to support the private financing, but again, our members, the private investors, put in about 80 to 85% of all investment. But what they need is that trigger, the 15% to 20%, to de-risk and enable them to enter the market.
Okay, because you talked about government and financing. Yesterday, this really big landmark decision, I think 100 billion of the 500 that they approved, it's going to go towards infrastructure to be allocated for climate and economic transformation investments, and that's huge. If you got to say, this is my wish list for this, where would you want to put some of that?
Oh, for sure, it's a combination of infrastructure, which means grids, yeah, and projects, meaning renewable projects. Clearly, there needs to be ring-fenced for that, for additional renewable energy capacity. That's the trick. And I'd also mention adaptation as well as mitigation, which means building renewable projects, but also taking into account nature positivity at the same time. It's a huge deal. I mean, the 100 billion is a significant amount of money, but the signal it sends being part of a defense and security budget is even more important, that renewables and climate action is recognized as a solution to the security issues.
Yeah, I mean, energy security is security. It's not a new refrain. We've heard it before. I've got one last question for you, but it's a 2-part question, if that's okay. So this is we're drawing towards the close of the second day of the BETD. People are here to meet with stakeholders, support ambitious action, showcase some solutions that can really accelerate the renewable energy revolution. And I want to ask, from your experience over the last 2 days, what are the most ambitious projects that you've heard about that you're like, I want to bet on that? And part 2 is, where are some problem areas where you wish you would have made a better connection?
I'll start with the second question. So it's about storytelling. And we've heard that through several of the presentations. I think the ability to tell human stories about the benefits of renewables, because they deliver at that level. I'm talking about affordability, security, prosperity, growth, jobs. I mean, these are the things that people understand and believe in. And it's about feelings rather than facts, and that's important. And in terms of ambition, in terms of projects, I think I'll actually go to last week. I was in the Caribbean last week at an energy event where there's multiple ministers from Caribbean islands. That's ambitious, but they have the belief that they can install renewable energy, and by doing so, get off the importation of fossil fuels. A large percentage of their GDP goes to import of fossil fuels, in some cases 40%, 50%. And that money could be going towards infrastructure, schools, health, and so on. It's a clear win, but it's quite ambitious because of the scale and complexity of those islands. That was, for me, a very eye-opening and inspiring visit.
Well, thank you so much for telling us about this inspiring visit. This has been an inspiring visit for me and for all of us here at the 2025 BETD. Bruce Douglas from the GRA, thanks so much.
Thank you.